Whenever I listen back to something that I do, it just makes me feel weird.
There are moments in television history that stop you cold. Moments where you forget you're watching a competition, forget the judges, forget the cameras, and simply find yourself holding your breath in the presence of something rare and real. The night Courtney Hadwin walked onto the America's Got Talent stage in 2018 was one of those moments. She was 13 years old, barely 5 feet tall, dressed in a black leather jacket and a fedora that looked like it belonged to a much older soul. The audience was politely curious at best. Then she opened her mouth, and everything changed. What followed was not just a good audition. It was a phenomenon. Within 24 hours, the clip of her performance had spread across every corner of the internet. Within a week, her name was being spoken alongside legends. Within a month, she had become one of the most talked about young performers on the planet. The world had found its next great voice, and the world was not shy about saying so. But fame, especially the kind that arrives overnight and without warning, carries a weight that most people never see from the outside. Behind the standing ovations and the millions of views and the glowing headlines was a teenage girl from a tiny village in northeast England who had never asked to become a global sensation. She had only ever wanted to sing. What happened next in her story, the injuries, the canceled shows, the quiet months away from the spotlight, painted a far more complicated and deeply human picture than any highlight reel could ever capture. This is the full story of Courtney Hadwin, and it deserves to be told honestly from the very beginning. Courtney Hadwin was born on May 6, 2004, in Heselden, a small village tucked into County Durham in the northeast of England. It is not the kind of place that appears on talent show origin stories very often. There are no music academies on the corner, no industry connections, no shortcuts to anywhere. What Heselden does have is community, and in Courtney's case, a family that recognized something extraordinary in their daughter very early and chose to nurture it rather than dismiss it. Her parents, and Marie and Paul Hadwin, were hardworking people who made time for what mattered. From the earliest age, Courtney showed an instinctive response to music that went beyond what most children display. She was not simply drawn to catchy tunes or nursery rhymes. She was drawn to soul, to the deep, emotional, chest-heavy sound of artists who had lived something and were singing about it. By the time she was 3 years old, she was dancing with her arms raised whenever music played in the house, not out of imitation, but out of what appeared to be genuine physical compulsion. The music moved through her. By age 8, her school introduced formal singing lessons, and it did not take long for her teacher to notice that Courtney was not a typical student. There was a rawness to her voice, a depth that had no business existing in someone that young. She joined the school choir, performed at assemblies, and earned a nickname from her classmates that told you everything you needed to know. They called her Rocker Girl. At 10, she organized a neighborhood group of children to sing and perform together, a little collective they named Durham Soul. Parents chipped in for instruments. Small crowds gathered. A local newspaper ran a feature with the headline, "A Young Girl Brings Soul to County Durham." She trained at Shotton Hall Theater School on weekends, where she worked on breath control, phrasing, and the art of letting emotion lead the voice rather than technique. She performed at a local festival in Durham City in front of thousands of people and held the stage with a focus and a presence that left the audience genuinely moved. By 12, she was saving pocket money to help her parents cover the cost of travel. She knew she needed a bigger stage, and she was already thinking about how to reach it. What strikes you about this part of her story is the absence of pushiness. Nobody manufactured Courtney Hadwin. Nobody invented a persona or hired a PR team or crafted an image. There was just a girl in a small village who felt things deeply and had found the one outlet through which she could express all of it. That authenticity would become the thing that made her undeniable when she finally stood in front of the world. In the summer of 2018, Courtney Hadwin boarded a plane to the United States for the very first time. She was 13 years old, carrying a small suitcase and an enormous amount of quiet determination. Her destination was Omaha, Nebraska, where she would audition for America's Got Talent. The show had launched countless careers and crushed even more dreams, But Courtney walked into the CenturyLink Center not as someone chasing fame, but as someone who simply had something to give and was looking for the right room to give it in. She was nervous by her own account. Standing backstage in the holding area, surrounded by other hopefuls practicing their routines and running through their lyrics, she gripped her audition form and steadied herself. When her name was called and she walked out through that narrow hallway and onto the stage, she looked small against the vastness of the theater. The judges, Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Mel B, regarded her with the polite, patient expressions of people who have seen a great many auditions and are waiting to be surprised. She chose to sing Piece of My Heart, the song made famous by Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company. It is not a song that forgives half measures. It demands everything you have, and then it demands a little more. The opening notes came out softly, almost tentatively, and then something shifted. Courtney closed her eyes, found the center of the song, and let it take over. Her voice cracked and soared and ached with a kind of longing that made the hair stand up on the back of her neck. She stomped her foot, moved with the music, and sang with the full-bodied commitment of someone twice her age and 3 times her experience. Simon Cowell leaned forward. Heidi Klum sat upright, eyes wide. Howie Mandel covered his mouth. The audience, which had been respectfully quiet, began to react with the kind of uncontrolled, spontaneous energy that cannot be manufactured. By the time Courtney finished, the entire theater was on its feet. Simon reached for his golden buzzer and pressed it. Gold confetti fell from the ceiling. Courtney's mother, watching from the wings, wept openly. When asked afterward why she loved to sing, Courtney gave an answer of devastating simplicity. She said it made her feel free. 3 words that explained everything. The clip from that audition went online, and within a single day, it had crossed 10 million views on YouTube. The New York Times wrote about her. The BBC wrote about her. Headlines called her the voice of a teenage Janis Joplin. Fans in Japan, Brazil, Australia, and dozens of other countries sent messages telling her that her voice had made them cry, had reminded them of someone they loved, had made them feel something they had not felt in a long time. Courtney Hadwin had not gone looking for all of this. She had simply sung the truth of what was inside her, and the world had recognized it. The weeks that followed her audition were a crash course in what sudden global fame actually looks like from the inside. She appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. She performed on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, where Jimmy's bandleader Questlove joined in and the audience clapped along. Record labels began reaching out. Merchandise companies sent proposals. Talk show producers lined up interview requests. Everything moved very fast, and much of it was thrilling, but none of it was simple for a 13-year-old girl from a village in County Durham. She continued her schoolwork through online classes with a tutor who traveled alongside her. Every morning, before any of the television appearances or the rehearsals or the photo calls, she practiced her vocal scales. She warmed up her voice, worked on her breathing, and tried to stay connected to the craft underneath the spectacle. Her mother's voice stayed with her throughout. Sing to share joy, not for fame. Those words were not just advice. They were an anchor. During the live show rounds of America's Got Talent, she performed Janis Joplin's Maybe on a stage framed by glowing arches and deep red light. The crowd rose midway through the song and did not sit back down. Confetti fell when she finished. Judges smiled and nodded with the unmistakable look of people watching something they know they will remember. Courtney advanced through round after round, building a fan base that felt less like a typical talent show, following and more like a genuine movement. But for all the joy and all the momentum, there was a growing reality beneath the surface that only those closest to her could fully see. She was a child living an adult professional life. She was separated from her friends, her school, her dog, the familiar rhythms of her ordinary days. She missed home in ways that she rarely spoke about publicly, but that her family understood completely. The price of extraordinary success, especially when it arrives so young and so suddenly, is often paid in the currency of a normal childhood. Courtney paid it without complaint, but the cost was real. In early October of 2018, Courtney joined a small tour with fellow America's Got Talent finalists. The group was traveling by bus from Minneapolis toward Madison, Wisconsin, for a series of back-to-back theater performances. It was late at night. Rain had been falling for hours, pooling along the shoulders of Interstate 94. Courtney sat near a window, reading messages from fans on her phone while other passengers rested under blankets in the dim light of the coach. As the bus approached a curve on a stretch of road known for slick surfaces, a sudden gust of wind pushed the vehicle toward the guardrail. The driver braked hard, but could not fully regain control on the wet pavement. The bus skidded sideways for nearly 20 feet before coming to rest against the barrier with a grinding impact that sent overhead luggage and equipment cases sliding from their positions. The sound, by all accounts, was one that no one on board would easily forget.